I'm Sophia Anderson, 34 years old, and books have been my sanctuary since I was a little girl. While my family saw only a shy bookworm who'd never amount to much, I was silently absorbing knowledge that would change my life. They laughed when I'd rather read than watch football, rolled their eyes when I talked about technology, and dismissed my dreams as unrealistic fantasies. Little did they know I was laying the foundation for what would become a $70 billion empire. The looks on their faces when they finally discovered the truth? Absolutely priceless. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about underdogs who came out on top. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Seattle, I was always the odd one out in my family. Our two-story blue house on Maple Street looked just like every other home on the block, but inside, I felt like an alien among my own relatives. While my brother Tyler excelled at football and my sister Megan dominated the swim team, I preferred the company of books to people. My bedroom walls weren't covered with posters of boy bands or movie stars, but with maps of the solar system and periodic tables. I'd spend hours organizing my bookshelf by genre, author, and then color, a quirk that made my siblings snicker whenever they passed my open door. "There goes Sophia, rearranging her nerd collection again," Tyler would say, tossing his football in the air as he walked by. At 13, he was already being scouted by high school coaches, his athletic build and natural charisma making him the golden boy of the family. My parents, Robert and Catherine Anderson, weren't deliberately neglectful, but their attention naturally gravitated toward my siblings' more visible accomplishments. Our living room gradually filled with Tyler's trophies and Megan's swimming medals, while my academic certificates were tucked away in a drawer somewhere. During dinner conversations, my parents would enthusiastically discuss Tyler's touchdown or Megan's improved backstroke technique, but when I tried to share my excitement about a new book on quantum physics, eyes would glaze over. "That's nice, honey," my mother would say, quickly redirecting the conversation. "Did everyone hear about Tyler's game-winning play yesterday?" The Bookworm, nickname started innocuously enough at a family barbecue when I was 9. Uncle Frank spotted me reading under a tree while the other kids played volleyball. "Come join the real world, Bookworm," he called out, generating laughs from the adults. The name stuck, and soon it was how everyone referred to me, not always kindly. My sanctuary became the local library, a majestic brick building with tall windows and the comforting smell of old books. There I met Mrs. Jenkins, the head librarian with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind cat-eye glasses. Unlike my family, she celebrated my hunger for knowledge. "The curious mind is never satisfied," she would say, saving new arrivals she thought might interest me. Under her guidance, I explored worlds beyond my family's limited imagination. When I turned 12, I discovered the computer science section. The concepts immediately clicked in my brain: algorithms, data structures, programming languages. They all made perfect sense to me. I began teaching myself to code using the library's old computer, staying until closing time, then continuing at home on our family PC when everyone was asleep. My parents assumed I was just reading again when in reality, I was building my first simple programs, my fingers dancing across the keyboard as I created basic games and calculators. The sense of accomplishment I felt when a program finally ran correctly was addictive. Each success, however small, fueled my growing passion. In 8th grade, I entered the regional science fair with a program I'd created that could predict weather patterns based on historical data. I spent months perfecting it, staying up late after finishing my regular homework. The night of the awards ceremony, I stood alone on stage accepting first place. My family had chosen to attend Tyler's football game instead, despite my repeated reminders about my presentation. When I came home clutching my blue ribbon, my mother said, "That's lovely, dear," before launching into an excited recounting of Tyler's game-winning touchdown. My father barely looked up from the newspaper. That night, I pinned my ribbon to my bulletin board and made a silent promise to myself. Someday, I would accomplish something so significant they couldn't ignore it. Someday, they would have to acknowledge that the quiet bookworm they dismissed had value too. As high school approached, The divide between my interests and my family's expectations grew wider. My guidance counselor suggested advanced placement courses based on my exceptional grades, but my parents questioned whether I could handle the pressure. Maybe you should take regular classes and join a sport or club, my mother suggested. You need to be more social, sweetheart. All those books aren't healthy. I took the advanced classes anyway, keeping my head down and excelling in subjects that mystified my siblings. By junior year, I was already taking college-level computer science courses online, building a foundation for my future that no one in my family could see or understand. Through it all, I kept reading, kept coding, kept learning. Each dismissive comment or missed achievement only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just a bookworm. I was a chrysalis, transforming silently, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The day my Stanford acceptance letter arrived, I rushed home, heart pounding with excitement. A full scholarship to one of the best computer science programs in the country. It was everything I'd worked for. I burst through the front door, waving the envelope. I got in. Full scholarship to Stanford. My mother looked up from folding laundry, a brief smile crossing her face. That's wonderful, honey. Is that in California? So far away. My father's reaction was more measured. Stanford? Isn't that expensive? Even with a scholarship, there are living costs to consider. Computer science? Tyler snorted when I mentioned my intended major. Couldn't you study something more feminine, like communications or education? Megan, 16 and already being courted by college swim coaches, at least offered a high five. Way to go, sis. Though I don't know why you'd want to spend 4 more years with your nose in books. Later that evening, over a dinner that was supposed to be my celebration, my father cleared his throat. You know, Sophia, you might want to consider something more practical than computer science. My friend Bill's daughter studied accounting, and she had 3 job offers before graduation. Computer science is practical, Dad, I argued, feeling my scholarship achievement already fading into the background. It's the future. The tech industry is growing exponentially and... There's that bookworm vocabulary again, Tyler interrupted with a laugh. Exponentially. Who talks like that? The conversation shifted to Tyler's football prospects and Megan's upcoming swim meet. My Stanford acceptance, the culmination of years of hard work, warranted less discussion than the new wax my brother was considering for a surfboard. When I left for Stanford that fall, my parents drove me to the airport, offering practical advice about safety and managing money. Not once did they express pride or excitement about the academic journey I was beginning. As the plane took off, I made another promise to myself. I would thrive at Stanford, with or without their emotional support. My roommate, Layla Garcia, was everything I wasn't: outgoing, fashion-conscious, and from a family that celebrated her every achievement. The daughter of Mexican immigrants who had sacrificed everything for her education, Layla couldn't understand my family's indifference. They should be throwing parties in your honor, girl, she exclaimed after hearing about my subdued send-off. My parents told everyone in our entire neighborhood about my scholarship. My dad carries my acceptance letter in his wallet. Layla became my first true supporter, staying up late to hear about my projects and ideas, genuinely interested in what I was creating. With her encouragement, I began to speak up more in classes dominated by confident male students. The imposter syndrome was real. I constantly questioned whether I belonged among these brilliant minds, but Layla never doubted me. You're the smartest person I know, she would say. Those boys just talk louder, not smarter. By sophomore year, I found my stride academically, earning top marks and the respect of my professors. I joined coding competitions and study groups, gradually building a network of like-minded students who valued intellect over social status. During my junior year, I developed an app for my software engineering project, a virtual study group platform that matched students based on learning styles and availability. When it gained attention beyond our campus, with several thousand downloads in its first month, I began to see its potential as a real business. With trembling excitement, I called my parents, explaining the app's success and my vision for expanding it. I need a small investment to improve the server capacity and add features, I explained. Maybe $5,000. I've done the projections, and with the current growth rate, I could pay you back within a year, plus interest. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Honey, my mother finally said, that sounds complicated. Maybe you should focus on finishing your degree first, getting a stable job. Your mother's right, my father chimed in. Apps come and go. My friend Richard's son tried something similar and ended up moving back home. Why not intern at an established company instead? Much safer. Disappointed but not surprised, I thanked them and ended the call. When I visited home for winter break, I brought detailed business plans and user statistics, hoping to change their minds in person. The family dinner that followed became painfully etched in my memory. So let me get this straight. My father said after I'd presented my carefully prepared pitch. You want us to invest in what exactly? A chat room for students. It's not a chat room, Dad. It's an adaptive learning platform that sounds like Facebook for nerds, Tyler interrupted, reaching for another dinner roll. Now working as an assistant coach at our old high school, he still had the same dismissive attitude toward my interests. Tyler, my mother admonished half-heartedly before turning to me. Sweetie, we just worry about you putting your eggs in one basket. The internet is so unstable. My father nodded sagely. My friend Jack's accounting firm is always looking for bright young people. Very stable industry, accounting. The conversation devolved from there, with my sister suggesting I try dating more, you might meet someone with business experience, and my father reiterating his concerns about the dot-com bubble, a term he'd clearly picked up without understanding that it had burst years ago. I returned to my childhood bedroom that night, tears of frustration streaming down my face. The shelves of books that had once been my refuge now seemed to mock me, reminders of a family that saw my reading as a quirky habit rather than the foundation of my ambition. That night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, I made a decision. I didn't need my family's financial support or approval. I would build my company anyway, and someday they would see what the quiet bookworm had become. After graduation, while my classmates pursued prestigious positions at Google and Microsoft, I took an entry-level job at Datasphere, a mid-sized tech company in San Francisco. The salary was modest, but it covered my expenses while allowing me evenings and weekends to work on my own projects. My cramped studio apartment became my laboratory, with whiteboards covering every wall and sticky notes detailing algorithm improvements. You could be making twice as much at a bigger company, Layla pointed out during one of our weekly video calls. She had taken a marketing position at a cosmetics company and couldn't understand my strategic choice. I need the flexibility, I explained. The bigger firms want 60-hour weeks. This way, I can build my own dream instead of someone else's. At Datasphere, I quickly established myself as a reliable, if quiet, team member. I volunteered for the projects others avoided, particularly those involving data analytics. Evenings found me taking online courses in advanced database management and artificial intelligence, building skills I knew would be crucial for my future plans. 6 months into my tenure, I met Benjamin Wright at a tech conference I had paid to attend myself. In his 50s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, Benjamin was a venture capitalist with a reputation for spotting overlooked talent. After listening to my passionate explanation of an adaptive learning algorithm I was developing, he handed me his card. Most people in this industry talk about what they've done, he said. You talk about what's possible. I like that. Call me when you're ready to make possibilities into realities. That card became my talisman, a physical reminder that someone in the industry saw my potential. I kept it in my wallet, occasionally taking it out when doubt crept in. At work, despite consistently exceeding performance metrics, I was passed over for promotion in favor of Jason, a male colleague who had joined the company 3 months after me, but spent more time socializing with management. We feel Jason has more leadership presence, my manager explained when I requested feedback. You do excellent work, Sophia, but you're so quiet in meetings. Maybe try speaking up more? What he didn't mention was the times when I had spoken up, only to have my ideas attributed to male colleagues later. Or the project meetings where I was asked to take notes rather than lead discussions, despite having more technical expertise than anyone in the room. During this challenging period, Layla became my lifeline. Now working in marketing at a major tech firm, she understood the industry dynamics I was navigating. "You should be running your own company," she insisted during one of our wine-fueled venting sessions. "These people don't deserve your brain." As I described my evolving vision for an educational technology platform that could adapt to individual learning styles, Layla's marketing mind immediately grasped its potential. "This isn't just an app, Sophia. This could revolutionize how people learn. Schools, universities, corporate training, the applications are endless." Her enthusiasm reignited my determination. Over the next few months, I refined my algorithm, creating a prototype that could assess a user's learning patterns and adjust content delivery accordingly. When I felt it was ready, I finally called the number on Benjamin Wright's card. To my surprise, he remembered me immediately. "The quiet revolutionary from the conference. I've been wondering when you'd call." After reviewing my prototype and business plan, Benjamin offered an initial investment of $200,000 in exchange for a small equity stake. With Layla agreeing to handle marketing and user experience, I finally had enough to quit my job and focus on building EDU tech innovations. The Thanksgiving after I left Datasphere, I returned home to Seattle, quietly excited about my new venture but apprehensive about sharing the news with my family. As usual, the conversation centered around Tyler's coaching career and Megan's new job as a physical therapist for a professional sports team. When the spotlight briefly turned to me, I mentioned leaving my job to start my own educational technology company. "You quit a stable job?" My father nearly choked on his turkey. "In this economy?" My mother's brow furrowed with concern. "But you had health insurance there, didn't you? And a retirement plan?" "I have investors," I explained, "and a solid business model with multiple revenue streams." Tyler laughed, spearing another piece of turkey. "Look at Bookworm using business words. Next thing you know, she'll be on Shark Tank getting eaten alive." "At least your books taught you some big words," Megan added with what she probably thought was supportive sisterly teasing. "But seriously, isn't the tech startup thing super risky? Like 90% fail or something?" The conversation quickly returned to safer ground. Tyler's team's chances at the state championship and my parents' plans for their anniversary cruise. My company, my dream, my potential. All dismissed in less than 5 minutes. As I helped my mother clear the dishes, she patted my hand sympathetically. "I know you're smart, honey, but the business world is so cutthroat. I just don't want to see you get hurt when this startup thing doesn't work out. There's no shame in going back to a regular job. Not if, but when it doesn't work out." Her lack of faith stung worse than Tyler's mockery. Driving back to my hotel that night, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Their doubts would not become my reality. I would prove them all wrong, not out of spite, but because I truly believed in what I was creating. EDU Tech Innovations began in a tiny office space in San Francisco's Soma district. Just me, Layla, and our first engineer, Marcus, crammed into a room barely big enough for our desks. The walls were thin enough that we could hear the dance studio next door counting beats, and our conference room was a corner table at the coffee shop downstairs. But what we lacked in space, we made up for in vision and determination. The first 6 months were brutal. Our initial prototype crashed during a demonstration for a potential client. A competitor launched a similar product with features we hadn't implemented yet. Marcus caught pneumonia and was out for 3 weeks during a critical development phase. There were nights I slept under my desk rather than waste time commuting to my apartment, surviving on vending machine snacks and determination. Through it all, I kept my struggles private. During brief calls home, I gave vague, positive updates. "Business is growing," I'd say, not mentioning that our bank account was dwindling faster than our client list was expanding. Why share my challenges with people who already expected me to fail? The breakthrough came 9 months in, when we finally perfected our adaptive learning algorithm. Unlike other educational platforms that offered one-size-fits-all content, our system analyzed how users interacted with material and adjusted in real time to optimize comprehension and retention. A student struggling with algebra would receive different examples and explanations than one who grasped concepts quickly. The system learned from each interaction, becoming smarter with every user. Our first major client was a small school district in Oregon facing budget cuts and teacher shortages. The superintendent, Patricia Jenkins, no relation to my childhood librarian, though I took it as a good omen, was willing to take a chance on our unproven technology. "We've tried everything else," she said during our pitch meeting. "Maybe what we need is something completely different." The results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Within one semester, student test scores improved by 27%. Teacher satisfaction ratings jumped as our platform handled routine tasks and allowed them to focus on individual student needs. When Patricia shared these outcomes at an education conference, our phones started ringing off the hook. As demand grew, so did our team. We moved to larger offices, hired more engineers, sales representatives, and content developers. By our second year, EduTech had grown from 3 to 30 employees, with offices in San Francisco and Portland. Benjamin introduced us to additional investors, allowing us to scale without sacrificing our vision or control. A pivotal moment came when I had to decide whether to pursue rapid expansion through venture capital or maintain a more controlled growth trajectory. Most tech startups in our position sought maximum valuation through aggressive funding rounds and media attention. But something in me resisted this path. "We could be on the cover of Wired next month," Layla argued during a strategy session. "I have a contact who's interested in your story, female founder disrupting education technology. It would put us on the map." I considered it seriously. The publicity would certainly help with recruitment and brand recognition. But it would also mean putting myself in the spotlight, something that made me deeply uncomfortable. "Let's build the company first," I decided. "Let our results speak louder than press releases. I don't want to be known as a female founder with potential. I want to be known as the founder of a company that transformed education." This decision to maintain a low profile extended to my personal life as well. As EduTech grew, I could have afforded luxury apartments, designer clothes, and the trappings of tech success. Instead, I lived modestly, investing my salary back into the company and maintaining the same practical wardrobe that had seen me through college. My few indulgences were quality books and a better laptop. Our breakthrough onto the international scene came through an unexpected channel. Hiroshi Tanaka, Japan's progressive education minister, discovered our platform while researching American educational technology innovations. After a series of intensive meetings and demonstrations, we secured a partnership to implement our system in select Japanese schools. The success in Japan opened doors across Asia and Europe. By our fourth year, EduTech was operating in 17 countries, with our user base growing exponentially. Our translation algorithms allowed our content to adapt not just to learning styles, but to cultural contexts and language nuances. When the opportunity arose to acquire LearnSmart, our main competitor, I didn't hesitate. The acquisition doubled our company size overnight and eliminated our biggest market rival. The technology press took notice, but I continued to delegate media appearances to our newly appointed Chief Communications Officer, keeping myself out of the spotlight. Throughout this period of explosive growth, my family remained largely unaware of my success. Our interactions had dwindled to holiday phone calls and occasional visits where I deliberately downplayed my accomplishments. When asked about work, I'd say things were going well or that we were expanding into new markets, true statements that revealed nothing about the scale of what I was building. During one brief visit home, I overheard my father telling a neighbor that I worked with computers in California. My brother still introduced me as his Bookworm sister, who does some tech thing. My mother regularly emailed job postings for stable companies in Seattle, hoping I'd move back home and find real security. Their perception of me remained frozen in time, the awkward, impractical bookworm who'd never quite fit in. And strangely, I let them keep this outdated image. Part of me was waiting to prove myself beyond any doubt, to reveal my success when it was so overwhelming they couldn't possibly dismiss it. Another part, if I'm honest, was protecting myself from their judgment, their questions, their inevitable attempts to take credit or ask for favors. By our sixth year, EduTech Innovations had become a global leader in adaptive learning technology. Our platform was used by millions of students across 32 countries. Our corporate training division served over half of the Fortune 500 companies. And our valuation had quietly crossed the billion-dollar threshold, making me a unicorn founder without a single magazine cover or television interview. At a family Christmas gathering that year, as I listened to my cousin bragging about his promotion to assistant manager at a sporting goods store, I realized the absurdity of my situation. I was signing contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars by day, then coming home to be treated like an underachieving dreamer by night. But somehow, I wasn't yet ready to bridge those worlds. The time wasn't right. I needed something irrefutable, something so massive that even my family couldn't minimize it. That something was coming sooner than I knew. Success came at a price. By our 7th year, EduTech Innovations had offices in 12 countries, over 3,000 employees, and a valuation that made financial analysts take notice. But while my company thrived, my personal life withered. I had become a walking stereotype of the workaholic founder, first to arrive, last to leave, existing on caffeine and takeout, sleeping on the office couch more often than in my own bed. "When was the last time you took a day off?" Marcus asked one Sunday afternoon when he found me reviewing code in an otherwise empty office. Now our chief technology officer, he had managed to maintain a semblance of work-life balance that completely eluded me. I couldn't remember. Weeks had blurred into months, punctuated only by product launches and funding rounds. My calendar was a Tetris game of meetings, with meals scheduled as fuel intake and sleep as essential downtime. My assistant had standing orders to schedule my annual physical as a non-negotiable infrastructure maintenance. The toll wasn't just mental. My body rebelled against the constant strain with migraines, insomnia, and a persistent low-grade exhaustion that no amount of premium coffee could overcome. During a routine checkup, my doctor warned me about elevated stress markers and borderline high blood pressure. "You're 32, not 62, she admonished. "This pace isn't sustainable. Your company won't benefit from you working yourself into an early grave." My wake-up call came in the form of David Chen, a brilliant data scientist who joined our research division. Tall, with thoughtful eyes and a quiet confidence, David was the first person since Layla who seemed to see beyond my founder persona to the woman underneath. Our collaboration on a new algorithm led to late-night discussions that drifted from artificial intelligence to philosophy, literature, and our shared love of obscure science fiction. When he asked me to dinner, not a working dinner, an actual date with no laptops allowed, I surprised myself by accepting. For 6 wonderful months, David opened up a world beyond EduTech. We explored hidden bookstores, hiked coastal trails, and had conversations that had nothing to do with education technology or business metrics. For the first time in years, I remembered there was a Sophia who existed separate from the company she'd built. Then came the Singapore expansion. A major contract required my presence overseas for weeks at a time. David was patient at first, but as one trip stretched into another, the strain became evident. "I'm dating a hologram," he said during one of our video calls, his frustration visible even through the pixelated connection. "You're physically here maybe 10 days a month, and even then, your mind is always at work." I promised to do better, to delegate more, to find balance. But when a critical system integration failed during our European rollout, I canceled our carefully planned weekend getaway to handle the crisis personally. It was the right decision for the company and the wrong one for us. David ended things with kindness, but finality. "You're brilliant and amazing, Sophia, but your relationship with your company is monogamous. There's no room for anyone else." His assessment hurt because it was accurate. I had built EduTech to prove my worth, and somewhere along the way, it had become my entire identity. Without the company, who was I? My rare visits home became increasingly painful as the gap between my reality and my family's perception of me widened. My father's retirement party was particularly illuminating. As family and friends gathered in my parents' backyard, Tyler dominated the conversation with stories about his promotion to athletic director at a prestigious private school. "It's practically like running a small business," he boasted, though his department had a staff of 6 and a budget I could have covered with my personal checking account. My mother beamed with pride, while my father clapped Tyler on the shoulder. Always knew you had leadership potential, son. When conversation reluctantly turned to me, my mother's questions revealed how little they understood my life. Are you still with that internet company? Have you thought about coming back to Seattle? Preston's daughter just got a stable job at Amazon with great benefits. Later, as I helped clear plates from the patio, my mother broached the subject of my personal life. 33 is not too old to start a family, you know. My friend Diane's daughter froze her eggs just in case. Maybe you should consider it, given your career situation. My career situation currently involved making decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of users worldwide. But to my mother, it was still a questionable choice that was interfering with more important life milestones. My sister Megan's wedding the following spring drove the point home even further. Despite being the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, I was seated at this singles table with teenage cousins and my great-aunt Ethel, who spent the entire reception asking me to explain what Wi-Fi was. During the reception, I stepped outside for a moment of peace, only to overhear my Uncle Frank talking to a family friend. Sophia? Oh, she does computer stuff in California. Never married, no kids. Such a shame, she was always so smart. But you know how it is with career women, always something missing. I wanted to confront him, to tell him exactly what I had built while they were all dismissing me as a spinster techie. But what would be the point? Their perception of me was fixed, impervious to facts or accomplishments they couldn't comprehend. During that visit, I made a detour to see Mrs. Jenkins, my childhood librarian, now retired but still sharp as ever at 82. In her cozy apartment filled with books and mementos from her decades at the library, I found myself confessing my frustrations. They still see me as that awkward bookworm, I told her. It's like nothing I've accomplished matters because it doesn't fit their definition of success. Mrs. Jenkins adjusted her glasses, studying me with the same thoughtful gaze I remembered from childhood. You know, Sophia, I've always wondered why you never told them the truth about your company. Is it because you don't think they'll understand, or because you're afraid they will? Her question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Sometimes, she said gently, we keep people at a distance not to protect ourselves from their disapproval, but from their sudden approval when it's no longer needed. You wanted their validation when you were young. Do you still? Her insight hit uncomfortably close to home. Was I waiting for the perfect dramatic moment to reveal my success because I still craved their recognition? Or was I prolonging the revelation because, once they knew, I'd have to face the pain of all those years they hadn't believed in me? On the flight back to San Francisco, I finally admitted to myself that my relationship with my family wasn't the only thing I needed to work on. At the recommendation of our company wellness director, I began seeing Dr. Harper, a therapist specializing in high-performing executives. Our sessions helped me recognize patterns I'd been blind to, how my childhood experiences had shaped my workaholic tendencies, my difficulty with vulnerability, my habit of measuring my worth through achievement. Slowly, I began making changes. I delegated more substantively. I established actual work hours. I reconnected with interests beyond EDU tech. Meanwhile, the company continued its meteoric rise. A groundbreaking partnership with the United Nations to provide our platform to refugee children around the world generated substantial positive press. Our higher education division disrupted traditional online learning with personalized degree programs. And our corporate learning solutions became the industry standard for employee development. When our valuation hit $70 billion after a major international expansion, I knew the time had finally come. I couldn't hide my success forever, nor should I. Whether I was ready or not, it was time for my family to know the truth about the bookworm they had underestimated for so long. The annual Anderson family reunion was a tradition dating back to my grandparents' time, a weekend gathering at my parents' lake house where extended family caught up on the year's events. Normally, I found excuses to limit my appearance to a single day, but this year, I committed to the full 3 days, knowing what was coming. I arrived on Friday evening, driving my rental car rather than the company helicopter that had offered to transport me from Seattle. Some revelations required proper timing, and I wasn't quite ready for the conversation that would follow my arrival in an aircraft with the EDU Tech logo. The familiar dynamics established themselves immediately. My brother Tyler, now married with 2 young sons, held court on the deck, regaling everyone with stories about the private school where he was now applying for the position of principal. It's basically running the whole athletic department now, but as principal, I'd be overseeing everything, he explained, chest puffed with importance. We're talking a $15 million annual budget. My sister Megan and her husband had just purchased a new home in an upscale Seattle suburb, which became the topic of extensive discussion over dinner. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and the best school district in the area, she announced proudly. We had to stretch a bit financially, but Richard's promotion came just in time. My parents beamed with pride at their successful children, occasionally glancing at me with barely concealed concern. At 34, I was still single, still working at that tech company in California, still the family's underachiever despite my Stanford education. Sophia, honey, can you pass the potatoes? My mother asked, seamlessly adding, I heard the University of Washington is hiring administrative staff in their computer department. Might be worth looking into if you ever want to move back home. Good benefits, state pension. I smiled and passed the potatoes, saying nothing. Throughout the evening, I fielded the usual questions and comments. Still renting, Sophia? At your age, you should really consider building equity. My neighbor's son works for Microsoft. Maybe I could put in a word? They have great job security. No special someone yet? You know, my yoga instructor met her husband through a dating app specifically for professionals. I could send you the link. I let it all wash over me, knowing that everything would change tomorrow. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing various scenarios in my head. Should I make a formal announcement? Casually drop the information into conversation? I still hadn't decided when morning arrived. Saturday unfolded with family activities, boating on the lake, a barbecue lunch, board games on the porch. My cousin Amanda showed off ultrasound pictures of her expected twins. Uncle James described his recent retirement cruise. Tyler outlined his 5-year plan to become superintendent of the entire school district. It's all about strategic positioning, he explained with authority. Networking with the right people, making yourself indispensable. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that I employed 3 former school superintendents on my education advisory board. By late afternoon, most of the family had gathered in the living room, some watching sports, others chatting in small groups. I was helping my mother arrange a cheese platter when the breaking news alert chimed on the television, causing several heads to turn. The regular programming cut to a special report. We interrupt this broadcast for breaking business news. Tech education giant EDU Tech Innovations has just announced a groundbreaking global initiative that will bring its adaptive learning platform to developing countries worldwide. The $70 billion company, founded by reclusive CEO Sophia Anderson, will partner with the World Bank to reach an additional 100 million students over the next decade. My photo appeared on screen, a professional headshot from our last investor meeting that our PR team had reluctantly released. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes swiveled from the television to me, standing frozen with a bunch of grapes in my hand. Uncle James dropped his drink, the glass shattering on the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. Is that you? My mother finally stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyler grabbed the remote, turning up the volume as the news anchor continued. Anderson, a Stanford graduate who has largely avoided media attention, built EDU Tech from a small startup to one of the most valuable education companies in history. Sources close to the company confirm that Anderson still maintains majority ownership, making her one of the wealthiest self-made women in the technology sector. More photos flashed on screen, our headquarters in San Francisco, students using our platform in classrooms around the world, and finally, a rare photo of me speaking at our last company all-hands meeting. Sophia? My father's voice cracked. Is this real? Is this your company? I set down the grapes carefully. Yes. I founded EDU Tech 9 years ago. I'm the CEO and majority shareholder. $70 billion? Tyler's voice rose to a near squeak. His face had drained of all color, making his freckles stand out starkly against his skin. Current valuation as of last quarter, I confirmed. We employ over 7,000 people in 17 countries. Aunt Martha had already pulled out her phone and was frantically Googling my name. "Oh my God," she gasped, scrolling through the results. "Oh my God." The cascade began: news articles, company profiles, industry analyses. My carefully maintained privacy had kept my name from household recognition, but within the business and education sectors, EDU tech was a juggernaut, and I was its architect. "Why didn't you tell us?" My mother's question held a complex mix of emotions: shock, confusion, hurt, and something new I hadn't heard from her regarding my career: respect. "Would you have understood?" I asked simply. "You thought I was wasting my potential on an internet hobby. You sent me job listings for entry-level positions last Christmas." My father stood up shakily, looking suddenly older. "We were just worried about you, about stability." "I know," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "You wanted what you thought was best for me, based on what you understood about success." The room buzzed with frantic whispered conversations. I could see my relatives reassessing everything they thought they knew about me, recalibrating their mental hierarchies. Cousin Eric, who had earlier bragged about his new BMW, now stared at his shoes. Uncle Frank, who had coined the Bookworm nickname, looked like he might be ill. The questions came rapid fire after that. "Do you really have offices in 17 countries? Have you met famous people? Are you actually a billionaire? Can you get my kid an internship? Why aren't you on the Forbes list? Did you fly commercial to get here?" I answered some, deflected others. Yes, the company was as successful as reported. No, I wasn't interested in appearing on magazine covers. Yes, I had met several world leaders through our educational initiatives. The family dynamics had shifted seismically in the space of 5 minutes. Relatives who had barely spoken to me at previous gatherings now hung on my every word. My brother, who had dominated conversations for decades, sat silently, occasionally opening his mouth only to close it again without speaking. As the evening progressed, the opportunistic requests began. Cousin Taylor needed funding for his app idea. Uncle Peter's daughter was looking for a job after college. My second cousin wondered if I might consider a small loan to help with his mortgage. I handled each request with polite deflection. This revelation wasn't about leveraging my success for their benefit. It was about finally being seen for who I truly was. Later, as the initial shock began to wear off, my mother found me alone on the back porch, staring out at the lake. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "All these years, why did you let us think you were struggling?" I turned to face her, seeing the genuine confusion in her eyes. I wasn't ready for this conversation until now. I needed to build something that even you couldn't dismiss as luck or a phase or a house of cards waiting to collapse. "We would have been proud," she insisted, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "You're proud now," I corrected gently. "But 9 years ago, when I was working 18-hour days in a tiny office, when we were just 3 people with an idea and no guarantee of success, would you have understood then?" She had no answer, and in her silence was my confirmation. The truth was finally out, and with it, a chapter of my life was closing. What would come next remained to be seen. The morning after the revelation, I found my father sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring into his coffee cup. The house was quiet, most relatives still asleep after a night of excited conversations about my unexpected success. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, pouring my own cup. He gestured to the chair across from him, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. We sat in silence for several minutes before he finally spoke. "I keep thinking about your science fair in 8th grade, he said, his voice rough with emotion. "The one where you won first place with that weather program. We went to Tyler's football game instead." I nodded, surprised he remembered. "You never said anything about winning. We found the ribbon in your room weeks later." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "That was the pattern, wasn't it? You achieving remarkable things and us not seeing them." "It was a long time ago, Dad." "Not to me. Not right now." He took a shaky breath. I'm sitting across from my daughter, who built something worth $70 billion, and I can't claim a single ounce of credit for supporting her. Not one bit of it. Tears welled in his eyes, something I'd seen only at his father's funeral. I'm so sorry, Sophia. We should have believed in you. I should have believed in you. The apology I'd sometimes imagined felt different in reality, less triumphant, more bittersweet. Thank you, I said simply, reaching across to squeeze his hand. Later that day, my mother found me helping to clean up after breakfast. With the awkward directness that was her hallmark, she launched into her own apology. I wanted you to have a stable, comfortable life, she explained, aggressively wiping down a counter. I didn't understand what you were building because it wasn't the kind of success I knew how to measure. She paused, setting down her cloth. When I was young, I wanted to be an architect.
Did you know that?
I shook my head, genuinely surprised. I was good at it too, spatial reasoning, mathematics, design. But my parents said it wasn't a suitable career for a woman who'd want a family someday. She smiled sadly. So I became a teacher instead, which was acceptable. Don't get me wrong, I loved teaching, but you had dreams too. I finished for her.
Yes.
And when you started talking about technology and startups, all I could think was that you were setting yourself up for disappointment. I thought I was protecting you. She wiped a tear with the back of her hand. Instead, I was projecting my fears onto you. And I'm so sorry for that. These conversations marked the beginning of a healing process, not an instant resolution. Trust and understanding would need to be rebuilt gradually on both sides. Setting boundaries with opportunistic relatives proved easier than I expected. A simple I don't mix family and business delivered with firm kindness was generally sufficient. For the more persistent cases, Layla had prepared a standard email about our formal channels for job applications and investment proposals. One of my first acts after returning to San Francisco was establishing the Margaret Jenkins Educational Foundation, named after the librarian who had believed in me when no one else did. The foundation provided scholarships for underprivileged students interested in STEM fields and funded school libraries in low-income communities. When I called Mrs. Jenkins to tell her about the foundation, her reaction was characteristic, practical appreciation without fuss. Well, that's a fine thing you've done, Sophia. Just make sure they stock plenty of science fiction. Those books saved us both, I think. The most surprising conversation came from my brother Tyler, who called a week after the reunion. After some awkward small talk, he got to the point. I've been a jerk to you our whole lives, he said bluntly. The bookworm jokes, dismissing your work, all of it. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that, I replied, hearing the genuine remorse in his voice. Here's the thing, he continued. I always thought I was the successful one. The athlete, the popular kid, the one everyone paid attention to. Finding out that my little sister is basically a tech mogul was, well, it's been humbling. He paused, and I could hear him struggling with his next words. But it's also made me realize something. I've been measuring success by how much attention and praise I get. You measured it by actually building something meaningful, whether anyone was watching or not. And that's the real difference between us. That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. We would never be best friends, but we found a new respect for each other's paths. Similar recalibrations happened throughout my family, some more authentic than others. The relatives who had genuinely cared about me before continued to do so. Those who had dismissed me and now sought advantage gradually faded to the periphery when they realized no special treatment was forthcoming. As my personal relationships evolved, so too did my relationship with EduTech. Dr. Harper's therapy sessions had helped me recognize that I'd been using work as both shield and validation. With my family's secret now revealed, I could finally address the unhealthy patterns in my professional life as well. I delegated more substantively, built a stronger executive team, and established actual work-life boundaries. For the first time since founding the company, I took a real vacation. 2 weeks in New Zealand with no laptop and limited email access. The company didn't collapse. In fact, it thrived under the leadership team I'd built, proving I'd created something that could succeed beyond my constant presence. Through a mutual friend, I reconnected with Michael Rivera, a children's book author whose work focused on making science accessible to young readers. Our first date lasted 5 hours, conversation flowing effortlessly from quantum physics to classic literature to our shared love of stargazing. Unlike David, Michael understood my dedication to EDU tech, but gently insisted on carving out space for a relationship alongside it. "Your company changes lives," he said. "But so does connection, love, balance. Both can exist together." Gradually, I discovered he was right. The world didn't end when I left the office at a reasonable hour. Breakthrough ideas often came during our hikes in the Marin headlands or lazy Sunday mornings making pancakes, not during midnight work sessions. 2 years after the family revelation, at another reunion at the lake house, I watched my nieces and nephews clustered around me on the dock as I read them one of Michael's books about a young girl who builds a robot to help clean the oceans. My family moved around us, setting up for dinner, the dynamics forever altered, but in many ways healthier than before. Tyler's son tugged on my sleeve. "Aunt Sophia, can you teach me to code? Dad says you're the smartest person he knows." From across the lawn, I caught Tyler's eye. He gave me a small nod, acknowledgement of how far we'd come from the days of bookworm taunts. Later, as twilight settled over the lake, my mother sat beside me on the porch swing. "You know what I'm most proud of?" she asked. "Not the company or the money. It's that you built it all while staying true to yourself. You didn't become someone else to succeed. You succeeded by being exactly who you always were." Her words captured the most important lesson of my journey. Success hadn't come from transforming myself to meet others' expectations or from proving my worth through achievements alone. It had come from embracing my authentic self, the bookworm, the quiet observer, the persistent problem solver, and building a life that honored those qualities instead of apologizing for them. I've learned that true success isn't measured by valuations or headlines, but by impact. The students whose lives are changed by our technology, the team members who grow alongside our company, the relationships that enrich my days beyond work. The shy girl who once hid behind books now leads with quiet confidence, no longer seeking validation but offering value. To those watching who feel underestimated or overlooked, I hope my story reminds you that sometimes the greatest achievements grow from the quietest beginnings. Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. Trust your path, even when those closest to you don't understand it. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of unexpected success. And remember, sometimes the people reading books in the corner are quietly writing the future. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to believe in yourself even when no one else does.